It being 5:27, I call the Finance Committee meeting to order on November the 17th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the October 5th meeting.
So first we have to state that we're
Yeah,
being recorded.
I need to say that, for the record, that the Oxford Access is recording this meeting, and that Karina Casey is joining us via Skype or
conference
Zoom?
call.
Pardon me, conference call.
And then just ask if she can hear.
Karina, can you hear us? Karina?
I sure can, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right. So, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the October 5th meeting? And if so, if there are any corrections or comments, if none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the October 5th minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Four of us carried unanimously. Next item on the agenda this is for the fiscal 2024 capital request. And it's going to be the Department of DPW. Jarrett Duvall and Mike Lipkus are going to be presenting. Right now we have before us 17 items totaling $1,840,000, and we're going to try to go through them within the next hour or so.
Yeah.
So I have gone through them all and spent a amount of good all Sunday afternoon. So my only questions are going to be alternative financing and priorities as we go through each one of them. We go through them quickly. So I guess we're going to start with the Building Improvement Fund. We got three categories: Building Improvement, Public Works, which covers Highway and Fleet, and then Cemetery and Recreation, and then Sewer Enterprise.
That's right, no sewer requests this go around.
All right, so those are the
we'll
four
keep it to those
categories.
Four divisions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, committee members. I'm Jared Duval, Oxford's DPW Director, joined by Mike Lupus, DPW's Facilities Director. We get a little presentation here that I'll just run through briefly. If we want to stop along the way, like John, you had said, Mr. Chairman, we've got a hard stop date in an hour or so we'll try to move through this as swiftly as possible. But starting right here from the top, I always like to start with our mission statement, just to remind the committee, the public, what our main priority is, what our main mission is on behalf of the community, and that's caring for the town's built environment, and doing so in a manner that hopefully we're improving people's quality of life while we do that. So at every phase of each asset's life cycle, whether it be planning, design, construction, operation, we've got a hand in it. So that's our main charge. Just going through a quick agenda here. We'll start with just a high-level overview of the CIP for the next 6 years, and then we'll delve into the various operating division service areas of DPW in which we've got requests or submissions. So the CIP is a critical component, as we know, of economic development in town, also the executing the strategic master plan, the objectives laid out in that plan, all through DPW's 7 operating divisions, a little over 30 full-time equivalents. Total requests over the 6 years within DPW just eclipsed $10 million. While we haven't identified these explicitly on the plan, these are other capital projects of note that I think are worthwhile for the people to know about, and obviously the Finance Committee will be reaching out to the public at some point for further discussion. But the Main Street Corridor improvements is a projected $8 million project in which we would receive state Transportation Improvement Fund funding,
Right.
through a town-funded design. So we're working through the 25% design process now. Downtown sewers, we've conducted a feasibility study that was appropriated. Monies were appropriated a couple of years back with a projected cost of $13 million to add sewer downtown. Our DPW facility, which we've not really touched on over the past couple of years, although you'll see some projects that pertain to our existing facilities to sort of facilitate and start the discussion around.
Future years to maintain. And the building's about 70 years old, correct?
Which building?
The DPW garage, the back garage. How old is that building?
That dates back to probably 70s, I think, at least, right? Mike, do you know offhand?
I don't know.
I think
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge too, because they had added on to it.
But a lot of it's 50 plus.
Oh, yeah, anyways, yep. And then our Route 20 sewer extension project, $2.8 million, which we were fortunate to receive a MassWorks grant to fund. So these are major capital projects that we'll be working through as well. And this is just a little overview of how it's divvied up amongst our different service areas. You can see over half of the CIP going to horizontal highway assets, and then split up accordingly across the other divisions here. So, starting right with facilities maintenance, I don't know that the submission forms are in the same order as the requests here, but this is just obviously a summary of the plan over the 6 years, and we'll just delve into the first projects that pertain to the Oxford Public Schools. So you can see in the imagery here on the left is relative to the VFD replacements at the high school on the roof. So I just want to call your attention to that capital submission form here. So essentially, we've actually, since we had put in this request, we actually received a Maya grant to replace a couple of these VFDs, these variable frequency drives, right, Mike?
Yes.
On top of the high school. And we thought that we would be able to do without this item, but it just so happens that we had another failure, right, in the past week or so. And we've got a few more of these VFDs that will need switching out over the next few years. So this will be part of sort of an annual program we anticipate to replace these. Going to the right here, on this slide here, you'll see some of the aftermath of some freezing in burst pipes or freezing coil, what the consequences of that have been for us. And that picture up there is sort of the remediation at the Barton School after we had a coil freeze. And Mike, feel free to chime in at any point. Had a coil freeze and then a pipe burst and flooded out the school. So what we're proposing to do in FY '24 is a glycol study. Commission a study to study all the schools to incorporate glycol into the heating and air systems to help prevent these kind of freezing and catastrophic
$25,000.
failures. That's right. We've got it estimated at 25
And the
grand.
funding's gonna be, you're not sure if we're gonna get a grant? Would that be something that fall under green communities or what?
We don't think so at this point. I mean, we haven't identified a funding source on here. We're anticipating that it'd be
And priority is,
I mean, this is not the only instance, it's been Barton School, and then you can see in the bottom when that crane is actually lifting into place a new coil that had froze and split.
High school.
Where we had, at the high school, where we had a leak over the cafeteria, so that was another instance again. And we think that, having an informed study, we can target, which buildings would be priority to receive glycol, so we can hopefully prevent these sort of issues going forward.
so we're looking at 25, we're looking at the HVA variable controls for 8. And then, those are the 2 items you've discussed so far.
That's right, and then the other one, staying into FY '24, and then new requests too, we can touch on at the high schools was the condenser coil replacement, which is actually seen, that's the existing one there on the right, bottom right, which would be a need for replacement. We've got it scheduled out in FY '25.
Right.
And that's a $140,000 request to replace that.
All right, so those are the 2 items, and then there's a replacement for, what's the next item you have?
I'll go just in order here with the
That's 2.
presentation. So, yeah, we're looking at FY '24 again, right?
Yep.
I can skip around here. Why don't we do this? To go in order with the table here, and I'll skip to the police department.
Police Department, there is a request for their
To
garage floor for $9,000.
refinish the garage floor, you can see here on the right. This has been a persistent issue in a request of the chief and lieutenant there. In the winter, where they drive the cars in, all the snow, salt, it's been eating at this existing floor covering. It clogs the floor drains. So we're proposing to replace that, to do a more robust covering and scrape off what's there now and do the concrete etching if we need to, and then put a surface.
Do more like the concrete would have be buffed down.
Yeah.
And it would be sealed.
Sealed, right.
And then in the same building here, police headquarters, this is a new request, it's in out years. I think we've got it identified out in FY 2026. You'd see here again, we have a dry sprinkler system in a section of the PD in unconditioned space. And you can see there highlighted is where a joint had let go. Our sprinkler maintenance company had done a routine test on the system. They left that pipe, that dry system charged. when it was supposed to be drained in the winter, cold weather, it froze, it cracked, and it flooded out the school. So what we're gonna do is look to make some upgrades to that dry sprinkler system in the surrounding area.
That's FY '25.
It's out in FY '26, I've got it on, yeah, so, again.
Trying to stay
Report-
focused on '24, so it's.
Okay, all right, so I know I'm jumping around a little bit, just trying to cover everything that's new, and so I can hold off on that then if that's best.
Yeah,
If you
let's
want to
stay
just
on
go-
24.
24?
Yeah.
All right, so we covered the OHS VFDs, we've talked about the refinishing the garage floor, we talked about the glycol study.
Yeah,
So why don't we go to the Oxford Library, we can talk a little bit about
the chiller
the
system.
chiller replacement HVAC control. So this is a familiar request, I think, to the
Right,
Finance
we
Committee.
talked about the controls in the chiller last time, we wondered why we didn't combine them.
We did, and we
You're over in
didn't
your-
have to combine them, but now it makes sense, because now we had an appropriation to do some remediation work on the mold and try to rectify
And
those
that's over
issues.
budget.
Way over budget, and we found that we still have a moisture issue. So we've treated the symptom of the problem, but we've not addressed the source. And we think we can do that now. What we'll do is, we have the $34,000 that was set aside in last year's building improvement fund for the controls. We'll use that to commission a study, have somebody actually, like a Fraser Engineering or some company, come in and actually target what improvements we need to make to address the humidity. It's an old building, it's an old fieldstone foundation in that section, so it's gonna be
We're gonna
difficult.
replace the siding in a couple of years, 2028.
The build, on the newer portion of the library,
I'm wondering if that's, some of that is the migration of the moisture problem.
it's a combination of the age, it's, again, fieldstone basement that was never meant to be watertight, basically. You're always gonna have the walls, right, sweating. We found some areas where we may have some water infiltration from outside as well, which we can address separately and have addressed. We've actually, some of the downspouts that go subsurface to like a leaching pit, I mean, those have probably been fouled up for years. Those have gone in at some point of that building's age. So we've done some work to try to daylight those and alleviate that source of water. So what we've done here then is, assuming that we'll use the $34,000 or a portion thereof to commission a study, we then take this funding here to actually replace the chiller, update the HVAC controls that you see there, which are very basic. Obviously, you're not getting remote operability out of these, and we're not able to tweak much with that ancient, archaic system there. Update the controls, and then provide some provisions for some sort of dehumidification as well in the basement, so we can try to rectify those mold issues and moisture issues once for good.
And we'll skip the school roofs. I mean, we touched on them.
Yeah, I
I know they're
should've-
gonna do a separate presentation.
Exactly, our thought was we'd focus just on the DPW
Right.
building-related requests, and they'll come back to
We have,
talk about those.
We have the Garland study, which goes from FY '24 through FY '28, which with roofs and siding are $8.5 million, of which this is a small portion of, on two 70-year-old buildings in a 50-something-year-old building. So that's a big discussion to have. But we won't have that tonight. All right, so the next item is window replacement.
That's right, so you'll see a couple images here, and you can see just looking at these windows how out of whack they are, basically, and I know Katie and some few others here that work in the offices. that
Scary.
can attest to the windows in the shape that they're in. So in FY '24, we've got a $15,000 submission to commission an architect. Given the historical significance of the building, we want a targeted and well thought out design and specification for these windows. And it's a
then
size
FY
one.
'25 would be the,
FY '25, yeah, so that's kind of something traditionally, I think we've kind of lumped things in together. What we've tried to do this go around is be realistic about the time frame it takes to get through a design, versus actually being able to bid these things out and implement that project, so that's why
maybe
we
this
kind
is
of
something
split
that would
things.
fall under green communities, being energy efficient, like,
It could,
other
yeah.
than LED lighting.
Yep, it could. It's obviously a weatherization component to
Right.
it, and and then in FY '25, the following year, we've got an estimate of $185,000
Right.
to actually do the window replacement.
And that takes us through building improvement funds based on the sheet I have, unless you, unless we're missing something.
The only thing else, if we wanted to focus on just new submissions, is that we had added items for DPW, for a couple of the DPW buildings out in FY '26.
No, yeah, I hear you. I looked at them, but let's stay with FY '24. I know
Okay.
there was a
Yep.
wall in FY '26 in
Yep,
one of the
it's-
garages, and then there's some other
Those
stuff.
buildings aren't getting any younger.
No,
That's the big-
no.
that's the-
Well, here's the problem. We have 2 school buildings over 70 years old by FY '24. One built in '54, one built in '55. Got $8.5 million according to Garland study that they did back in 2020. Oops, inflation. Okay, that was $8.5 million back then. And on 2 70-year buildings, when do we throw in good money after bad? That's a big discussion we won't have tonight, but the garage falls into that same discussion. When do we hold them and when do we fold them on new buildings versus putting Band-Aids on old buildings?
One of those items you'll see too is a lift replacement, hydraulic lift. that
Yeah,
we actually
$200,000 to put in an old building to put a
crumbling
$200,000
around
lift in.
it.
Right.
So, since the time of submission, that lift, it's a 2-piston lift, one of the pistons did fail, and it's a cost of $50,000 to replace it.
Yeah.
So, and right at the moment, we're down, so, it just speaks to the age of these buildings, and then the fact that if we're not talking about a new facility, there's gonna be a need to throw good money after
After
bad.
bad. Same with the schools.
And the only other new item, that was added was 3 Barton Street, and what fate,
I mean, the demolition of Barton Street
So,
for next
so we
year
we
is
put it-
$75,000.
We pegged it as a demo after hazardous abatement and, an assessment abatement and then the actual demolition
It was
cost.
75? Yeah.
75, exactly, so,
Oh, we should mention the roof replacement at the senior center. There was an email about that today.
Yeah,
about moving-
$100,000 you have for the roof replacement. at
yeah, and
senior
that's
center.
an important one to note too, and it just speaks
Because we
to
wanna
the
move that one up.
shifting priorities, despite our, what we're well-intentioned to lay this plan out and stick to it year over year, but we know things are really dynamic. The senior center, we thought that was something that could last another cycle. It's since, and Mike can speak to it, we've since had recurring leaks more frequently, more water damage. That's something that we're working with the manager's office now to see if we can rectify sooner, even this year or
That-
next construction season, trying to reallocate or reprioritize our building improvement funds that we have now to make that project
That
happen.
100,000.
How old is that building, Jared? You know?
The senior
Bowling
center.
alley back in the day.
Oh, is that
Yeah, and
right?
somebody just said there was, I forget what was demolished, that something was demolished too to build that. I don't know the
Well, that-
timeframe
I think the
offhand.
frame was
Yeah,
there. Now, if you go outside, and you from the exterior, you look at the soffit and everything, you can see black mold. I mean, it's rotted.
Yeah, and there's nails that are popping through
Yeah.
the shingles. I
Visibly,
mean,
you
so,
can-
so the project would be to,
Replace
and
all
we
that.
think, we initially contemplated, I think we were assuming a metal roof maybe potentially at $100,000. We've since got some pricing and had Garland evaluate it, maybe $50,000 or so to do a
here's-
shingle with gutters.
We want to save the building, but if we're going to talk about a community center where we move the senior center over, again, this is a
Then it-
discussion
then
that needs to be
that
had later
roof would
on.
be long outlasting the building, and if we're gonna
What purpose is it going
divest
to
from
have
it
if the
anyways,
seniors move
then,
over to a
Yeah.
community center?
then a shingle roof is fine. So that'd be the other,
So
overall
these
project, I think.
4 items right now for FY '24 as proposed, total $355,000. So now we're on to Department of Public Works, and the first item, of course, is roads. $500,000 to match the Chapter 70 money.
That's right, and this is a familiar item.
Right.
I'm sure you're aware of as well.
And that'll just keep our roads in the same condition they're in today.
Let's skip around, and we'll go back to fleet. Oh, there's a delay here.
And my question on roads, what did we spend this year on roads with green community and some other,
Not green communities, but
Green
we,
initiative or
we
community.
spent, we had some money, a little bit of
Neighborhoods.
money left over from previous fiscal years road rehabilitation fund. I think most people have seen the project, the major improvements we did up on Sutton Ave and Joe Jenny, which was way more than just a reconstruction job. We added drainage.
Right.
Curbing, that was at a cost of 1.1 million, so essentially all of 23's roadway rehabilitation funds, plus some dribs and drabs from a previous year, and then we were fortunate to get a $300,000
that's what I was talking about,
winter recovery assistance program.
winter recovery.
Money from the state that they divvied up to all the communities in Massachusetts based on roadway mileage. Not roadway mileage, sorry, I think it was population actually.
Population, because that's where we come,
Yeah,
The
usually
formula's
with
skewed
Chapter
when we get
90, the
through.
formula is different, where it's based on employment, it's based on roadway miles, so
And
you know,
I've talked to
we
the town
tend to
manager
lose out
about
a
it.
little bit on that.
Yeah, I've talked to the town manager about see if we can get that formula changed. So we don't benefit with that calculation.
So we spent all that, with that money, we did a resurfacing project in the Sherwood Forest area of town. We paved 7 streets, on top of the work that we did out on Sutton Ave and Joe Jenny, and we actually did a pavement reclamation job. We turned a road, Old Charlton Road, to gravel, compacted gravel base. For the winter, we'll come back and try to pilot our very own paving program with internal forces and rented equipment for the first time. So we'll do that hopefully
House.
in-house next season.
So with this 5 matching the chapter 70 money of 5 and change, 510,000 or whatever it comes out to be, are we gonna be spending less money on roads this year based on the fact that we're not gonna get that winter state money that we got, whatever it was, winter reclamation?
It'll
or whatever?
essentially be status quo if we're, you know, assuming the match funds that we've got proposed here, and then about a little over 500,000, essentially 500,000 in chapter 90. So it'll be slightly less potentially than what we were able to do this year. Although our goal is, and I'm in the midst of developing, near finalizing our next 3-year pavement management plan, which we hope to publish on the website and start getting that information out to the public.
Right.
We need to start moving a majority of our roadway funds to more preventive maintenance items.
So we
You know,
don't
so we're not spending
more roadways.
2/3 of the budget on a major capital project such as Sutton Ave and Joe Jenny. It's just hard to look away when those are your main arteries. But we've got Charlton Street in good shape now, Sutton Ave, Main Street, we're obviously working on that. Leicester Street, Route 56 has been recently done, Dudley Road. So a lot of these connectors and arterials in town here have been addressed. So we can start
Neighborhood.
matriculating into the neighborhoods and doing more preventive maintenance stuff and the shim and overlays and that sort of thing. So we're hopefully, we'll be covering more ground over the next 3 years, is the goal.
Instead of just treading water like we have
And
been.
and you'll see, you know, what we tried to do this year in the capital plan is we've got the $500,000. We've been saying for years, based on our pavement management analysis, it's $1 million to just maintain the town's network condition. Well, that means, that's assuming that every cent of that $1 million is going to roadway resurfacing or reconstruction work, not drainage, not curbing, not sidewalks, or any of the ancillary items associated with those projects. So what we're doing now is with newer items like townwide culvert repair and rehab, townwide ADA sidewalk improvements, we're pulling that money out to try to put more of that $1 million to
Right
just the
into roads.
resurfacing work and hopefully gain more
The
ground.
next 3 items are for culvert and ADA.
And that's right, so we
And what
can,
people don't realize is roads are, we rate them as far as condition, but the state rates them as far as when you touch a road, what you're mandated to do, depending on if the road is a certain category in their mind, you have to address stormwater management, you have to do certain things, ADA compliant, all these things,
Exactly.
depending on how it's rated. We're not allowed to spend our money the way we want to spend it, as far as
there's
focusing
certain,
on the road itself.
certain regulations in place. If we do anything basically below a crack seal on a road, and you're doing a curb-to-curb repair, and you have sidewalk facilities or curb ramps, you're obligated to update those to ADA compliance.
Before you
So-
touch the road.
Before, before you touch the road, essentially, or as you're doing it. You can't do it and walk away and then say, we didn't have the funding. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the expectation.
I think people need to understand that they tell us how we spend our money when it comes to roads.
Despite being town, you know, with state funding involved.
Right.
We have to submit to the state for project request and approval. They look at all the items, the scope of the work, and they actually will say, yes, we approve this for use with the Chapter 90 funds. So they do have a level of control over.
But it depends on the
So-
type of road, the
that.
way they
Yeah.
look at it, whether it's main arterial or ancillary, or what road, what type of roadway is, the type of traffic it generates, what you spend money on first. And usually it's stormwater management, sidewalks, then when you got money left over, you do the road itself.
A lot of times it works out that way, or you just can't turn a blind eye to it
Right.
and invest the money if you haven't done that underground
The
work.
reason I'm
there.
stressing this, so people are watching, they understand when we go to town meeting,
Yeah.
that we're beholding to the state of how the money's spent.
Next, highway-related item, and this is a resubmission, but Harwood Street Bridge clean and paint. And you can see some imagery here, taken just to show the corrosive state there of the existing beams. We had done some work and invested some money back in 2016 to do some slope stabilization. You can see in the back there. Do some small repairs to the concrete, redo the bridge joints, redo the bridge railings, and paint them, and then pave, those approaches. So That was a good project to prolong the life, really a preventive maintenance project, but we had to pull the painting scope out because we couldn't afford it at the time. And since that time, it's been on our list to tackle this.
Now, that's FY '25, 350,000, I think you have
But
that.
there were some disconnects in the spreadsheet
Was there?
versus the tab. So the tab may have said FY '24, but it still may have been under FY '25 in the spreadsheet because the column didn't move over when the
Oh,
dates
right.
updated. So that might be the disconnect here, because I think I know there was
In the summary sheet, Katie, you're saying?
the
that you-
summary sheet, yeah, and I think.
So I think the intention was for it to be a 24
Yeah,
request.
so I just moved that
um,
over, because I do know that there were some that the tabs were different than the spreadsheet.
Well, if we add that one over, that's gonna add 18 items, and it's gonna increase the 1,840,000 by 300 and change there. Just
let's
FYI,
see
I mean,
where I-
350,000 more.
No, that's right, I had it highlighted as a 25, sorry. So
But the
that-
tab may have said 24, because I
Gotcha.
think that's what, a lot of them were like that, and then I started going by the tab, not the spreadsheet,
Okay, I
so.
looked at each one. I spent all Sunday afternoon going over all these.
Okay.
Every year, I spend 6 hours.
Oh, there's a lot here.
Yeah, well, I went over every year going back, and then I did the school, and that's when I got the Garland report, and I saw the 8.5 million that they're projecting through FY '28 on two 70-year-old buildings.
So painting will be required here to prolong the life of this bridge, and before we get more section loss on the beams, and before you're looking at more rehabilitation-related type repairs, more costly.
Is that something we'll do in-house, Jared?
No, this is very specialized painting. I mean, that could be, given the age of the bridge, could be lead paint. You actually have to encapsulate the whole thing, considering you're over a main perennial. It's the French River, right? So there's a lot of work involved in that. And I anticipate these painting companies, they're far and few. I mean, something like this, you'll have a painting company even from the Midwest that may come out for this type of work. But it's well beyond what
They
we're.
tent it and everything. so
Tent
that-
it, yeah. Okay.
All right, so, but you have some culvert repair for FY '20. Like you said, you pulled out from the roadway, the 500,000, you pulled out some culvert
So
25 and
we've got
25.
dozens and dozens of culverts that we know about in various stages of disrepair. So the idea with this item is, it's a pot of money where we can start doing 1 to 2, maybe minor capital projects in themselves, but it's more than just a maintenance-related project. We're talking about either having to dig and replace various culverts in the road, slip line them is another technique. We gave us some latitude as to what technique we use, obviously. But for the foreseeable future, we've got plenty of culverts we know we need to address. This one here on Depot Road, the Depot Hill section, as we call it, you can see at the bottom, that's an old CMP pipe where essentially the bottom is just corroded out.
Right.
And these things start to settle, fail. We've had a couple failures given rainfall, intense rainfall events that we had to appropriate money to repair. So we're trying to be proactive about this. So this slide just demonstrates a few projects here that we've now added, starting with a townwide bridge and culvert inventory and assessment. So we have slightly less than, we have 8 or so bridges with actual bridge numbers. We know where those are, right? That's obvious. But to do an actual assessment with an engineering firm to come in, tell us what all the deficiencies are, and then same with our culverts. That's more of a lofty task, to identify every culvert in town, map them on a GIS map, because essentially, I mean, we can't manage what we don't know, right? I mean, we know where most of these things are, but to have them in one place where we can pull up assessment data and start to target our repairs with our capital
Prioritize
plan,
everything.
it means, it means everything to have that data at our fingertips.
So you have 2 requests for 25 and 25 on culvert repair, and then 1 for ADA for 55 for the sidewalks.
The bridge assessment and culvert inventory that I just mentioned is a $55,000 request for FY '24.
And the pedestrian walkway was 25.
And then the pedestrian townwide, so we can talk about that. I did want to just touch on, we'll stay to 24, that's right. So the townwide culvert repair and rehab is where we just that'd be the implementation arm, I guess, of this study, is to actually have funds that we don't have to rely on roadway rehab funds, where we can just target now our deficient culverts, where we have the roadways either settling or hydraulically it's not functioning the way it should. We've got money there where we can start checking off these deficient culverts.
You got 25 and 55, so you got 80,000 for FY '24 for target for culvert,
That's
and
right.
25 for the cuts for the ADA, for the sidewalk, the curbing.
That's right, so this is
Wheelchair.
again, generating, and this is tied into the town's, let me see here. So this will talk a little bit about that project,
Yeah.
so.
And
it's to
hopefully
address-
there'll be some funds with, now that we have an ADA committee.
Well, that's just it. So that's really having these funds at our fingertips outside of our operating budget. This is for more, again, capital improvements, not so much maintenance related. Long swaths of sidewalk that we would hire a contractor, someone to come in and
just
replace.
do it.
Multiple curb ramps throughout town. You can see this one's too steep. There's heaving tree roots. There's no detectable panel. None of this is ADA compliant. So it would be a pot of money where we can take our transition plan, once it's updated through the grant funding that we received, and actually execute on that plan
Yeah, I don't know.
for our public right-of-way assets. That's an important thing. When you're talking about the transition plan that's required pursuant to the ADA, it's public buildings, it's programming, it's equal access to all of your
Everything.
facilities and programs, but also your public right-of-way, your parks, your sidewalks, your curb ramps, everything. So,
People didn't realize we couldn't use the library elevator if it wasn't ADA compliant, then nobody could use it. In other words, if they can't use it, we can't use it. It's all or nothing. And people need that. Now that we have a committee, there's money that's grant money that won't come from the taxpayers or us. That money, we can get grant money to do these projects because we have an ADA committee, which we didn't have a couple of years ago, to apply for this. I'm making that known so that people are watching, they understand that. Now, you touched on the two bridges for FY '24, 25, I'll just briefly, you got 350 for the Harvard Street Bridge and cleaning and painting, and then Old Webster Road and 450, and I think there's a couple other stone bridges like you had in the picture there that are historical.
so that's the
That-
Clarabarton
right.
Road Bridge there.
and
So
that need to be
So
looked
the
at.
new requests in '25 and '26 are again splitting
Yep.
out design and then construction for miscellaneous, really maintenance-related bridge repairs. So again, we're trying to be proactive here. Do the design with an engineering firm to address three bridges.
Because they're
Clarabarton
historical.
Road, Charlton Street, over the French River, and then Old Webster Road is a sizable two-barrel culvert that needs some maintenance. And we're talking repointing the masonry arch underneath, doing some slope stabilization where there's erosion, those sorts of things. But again, $600,000 for those sort of repairs on three bridges is short money considering what it would cost if we let these things go.
Because they're historical in nature, sometimes
right.
the cost is a little more because we have to maintain this.
Especially for this bridge, yeah.
Yes.
That's right. And to get the graffiti off too, that'd be
Yeah.
obviously part of that, but.
All right, so that takes us through those three items. And now we're down to, we're out of highway, out of Department of Public Works. We're in the fleet, right? Unless I'm going down the page here. And with 100,000, vehicle 33 comes back up again, the four-wheel vehicle we use for hilly terrain that we want to rebuild.
That's, yes, 33, that's right. So it was partially funded in '23. It was three trucks that were sort of lumped into the fleet repair replace program. 30 trucks, 31 and 60, in which we did a body swap on truck 31. We took an older body, or an older truck that we retired. The body was actually in good shape, so we put that on 31 to prolong the life of that cab and chassis. Keep it in our fleet. 60, we're waiting on the new body for that. Actually, it's been on order for months and months, and we're hoping we get that truck back online for the winter. But that project's done. So we had, I think, 150 grand that was appropriated last year. We've not spent but 100,000 of that or so, maybe less. So we've got that money, plus this would be the balance needed to make these repairs on truck 33, which again is our largest truck in our fleet, the only four-wheel drive truck we have. It's an older truck, but it's in great shape because it's only used in the winter and only for those most extreme terrain basically in town.
Yeah.
To buy this truck, I've talked to suppliers now, not only the cost, right? He told us to buy a truck similar to that now, you could be anywhere from 350 to 400 grand to purchase that truck given.
Wait.
But you wouldn't be able to get it, is basically the issue now. I mean, trucks now, just as a general theme, talking about fleet, we really have to be like 2 to 3 years ahead, planning for the replacement, obviously, of vehicles and trying to execute orders, or at least sign for orders, almost 2 years by the time we need that truck to enter into our, our fleet. Because even the smaller trucks now, case in point, we've got these vehicles laid out here. The order bank for next year, fiscal year '24, for number 48, the Ford dump trucks and the smaller trucks, it's open for 4 days at the end of this month, and then that's it. If you don't get orders in, you're not getting a truck next year. That's what we're up against right now, given the supply chain issues. You know, people can see that too themselves going to the dealership. They know inventory's low, but it's bad, and they don't project, based on our suppliers and distributors, we don't see it getting better for the next year or two, at least.
So, you know, we did some lease purchase on some of these things. I was just
Yeah.
wondering, again, to funding, but it goes back to your operating budget. I don't know where you are on what we've already done coming
Yeah.
off your operating budget for FY '24, which we're gonna talk about next year.
That's right, so, I've looked in that a
How
little.
much pain in your operating budget can you sustain to go with
Well,
the lease
we
purchase?
had
And of
the-
course, what's the interest rate gonna be today with the?
That's right, so I did have the leasing company do some preliminary figures for us, looking at these items here. And obviously, with truck number 33, and then assuming with a DPW administration and facilities vehicle, we see 3 of those vehicles being replaced over the next 3 years. I would assumedly those would not be leased. The
small
DPW
ones.
admin, the small one, and then you can't lease the repair work, obviously.
And one of these, you said we can get some green initiative if it's electric.
Potentially, the DPW admin vehicles, that's what we'd be looking to do over the next few years, is leverage Green Communities funding
Right.
for like an EV or hybrid vehicle. They're hard to come by, but again, it's a supply chain thing, but we'll try. But the other 4 vehicles in the middle there, you see, between the number 53, 44, the 56 backhoe, and then 48 dump truck, I did have the leasing company evaluate a lease, similar to what we had done previously. 5-year terms for the 550 and the 350, and then 7-year terms for the larger equipment, just like we did last go-around with the 4 trucks. The payments come to about $130,000 annually currently, and that's based on a 5 to 6% interest rate. So a far
So-
cry from what we had locked in
So
over
we
the
could
last few
take this,
years.
all these vehicles, including the 35, just for conversation,
Mm-hmm.
790,000. So we could, if we padded your budget by 100, what'd you say, 100?
130, I mean, again, that was just assuming the small vehicle, and then we can't really account, I would take, out of the 790, I'd take the 100,000 out, because those truck repairs on 33 would not be able to.
So it'd be
use those.
690. Take the
Yeah,
100 out. So
sure.
690, we pad your operating budget for FY '24 by 130.
Well, or,
Otherwise,
we
we're
had
robbing
done.
Paul to pay Peter.
well-
Otherwise, you gotta watch.
Well, we had
your
done
fuel.
previously with the previous lease, and this was just for maybe discussion, later discussion.
Sure, later, Nick, when we get to
Right,
your budget.
here's the need, and then when we talk about even the capital items themselves or the operating budget, but I know what we did with the other lease program was appropriate years 1 and 2 payments, and then started building it into the operating budget. I've also got our schedule for our current leases laid out to see when things are gonna be dropping
Coming off,
off.
and I think in 2 years they will. come
For
off.
instance,
Some have.
exactly, and that coincides, that's why you'll see,
We can kind of pass in the night, so
Yeah.
that one comes
Yeah.
off, one goes
So
on.
you don't want to add another 130 grand to the budget, because the thought is we put the money in the budget to have a sustainable budget to rotate equipment. And
Yes.
so every 5 to 7 years, you're putting new equipment that's getting leased and you're paying through the budget. And we expect that payment could increase, but we don't want to double it.
No, not,
Double it and do an
that,
extra.
that wouldn't be the idea,
Right.
what I was thinking this year. There is, and that is how we talked about this lease program, right? There are gonna be capital needs inside of that first round of leases, right?
So if we
That's
give
what
you
we're
some
up
seed
against.
money,
So it's,
like you said, year 1 and 2, seed
yeah,
money.
and it's just to wait 5 years when these vehicles start to drop off, these vehicles, I mean,
Then you're
they're
waiting
ready
2
right
years to
now.
get 'em.
They're
Now you're
20
7
years.
years.
You know, 44, truck 44 is going on 20 years old. You know,
And then we're not plowing the roads.
that's right. That's really what it comes down to.
So that's where we appropriate some capital money to the
That's-
immediate needs in between the leases.
Right.
That-
Or
that's
while
kinda-
the one
and-
lease
And
is
I
going
figured
on.
that'd be a conversation.
Right, I think
for a
there's some
later date,
creative,
but-
I just wish the rates were more conducive, conducive like they were
The,
prior.
We all
my
do.
liaison, yeah, at the leasing company said that they're inflated, the market rates are just inflated now. He hopes by the time we would be taking action potentially on a
Maybe they'd
new
right-
lease schedule, maybe
come
they go
down.
down. We're talking after town meeting, obviously, that this would be,
Right.
you know, fully flushed
We'd
out
be in-
and
we'd be
approved
next-
potentially.
We'd be in June of '23 sometime,
Yeah.
July.
Yep.
But we need to think about it now. This is
That's
what the
just it,
conversation-
because these vehicles, again, you know,
I looked
and
at
gone
them, they're-
are the days where really you can, because the suppliers, the distributors, and Ford are trying to cover themselves. So you used to be able to talk to a supplier and say, hey, this is kind of our plan. Can you set aside a truck for us? Kind of
Well, I'm
put
looking
our
at these-
name on it, but they can't. They want commitment now, and it's.
I'm looking at these vehicles, 53, 2006, 44, 2005, 56, 2002, 48, the youngest, or 2012.
48 was actually ahead of schedule here, and this just, again,
The motor
despite
blue.
our best plan.
But then I
the
said, well,
motor
gee,
blue.
that's a young pup, it's not a 2000, oh, the motor blue, okay.
And we were looking at, we had already put money in because we had a catastrophic failure with the drive shaft let go on it last winter. So we dumped in a few thousand, $6,000 to get it back on the road. And then it just had issues, ripped all the electrical out of the truck. And then from there, the motor went in.
It's like good money
It
after
would be
bad.
$10,000 for a new motor plus $10,000 for labor. So where do you stop,
Yeah,
know?
it's good money after bad.
With
We're
an
having
80,
this- we're having
where
this
you spring
conversation
for
on
a new
this.
truck.
And on the buildings, good money after bad. I looked at them all, I said, my God,
We did get $12,600 for that, though, at auction, just closed on the 15th. So somebody from down in Kentucky or West Virginia. So I think it speaks to the need on the used side that people can't find. So they'll take
Yeah.
it on and they'll replace the engine and they'll have a truck with only 60-some-odd thousand miles on it. A lot of hours and a lot of equivalent engine miles, but again, people can't get trucks, so.
any port in the storm, right? All right, so that takes care of fleet. Now we're on to, and so, and that totals 790, and we're talking about that 100, we're probably net out to 690 when we, because there was some money to fix 33. So now we're on to Parks and Recreation. We got two items in that, totaling what, 80? 90,000, yeah. Got rural field cameras.
Well, I began the discussion since I've been here, try to engage, obviously, the Recreation Commission and ask what their priorities are in developing these projects. So for this year and in out years, that's the basis for these projects, is identifying, what we think the need is, obviously, internally, and then seeing what the Rec Commission's priorities are. So first project, we had kind of lumped it in as more of a catch-all for rural field this year. And it's broken down, the $65,000 request, broken down for security cameras and a basic alarm system. You can see examples on the concession stand there. That's pretty routine where we get this sort of graffiti and tagging. We've had broken siding, broken lights, broken electrical receptacles on the outside. The roll-up window there, you can see that's the sill to the roll-up window on the
Yeah.
right. They've actually pried it open. Kids have gotten in there, and there's thousands in kitchen equipment that the town invested in, and they were able to get in there. So there's really no alarm system currently for that, and there's no, besides some cameras on the corners of the buildings, which you'd think would be a deterrent. It's not. There's nothing at the site itself in the way of cameras. So we're limited as to the coverage we've got. So we have a quote for. Got a quote from Dosco. It was about $21,000 to install upwards of, I think it was 11 cameras at the facility up there, and have them try to tie them into the town's network of cameras, something that the police would be able to access to facilitate their investigations. Because a lot of times we don't catch the people that do this.
I hate to say this, but I will. They've caught people, and they brought them to the police station and brought the parents in. And when you have a parent that says, well, too bad, sue me, then the camera doesn't work too well. That's what's happened.
There's been those instances, or if they have caught them, they've brought them to us. They've asked us to work up a cost to make the repairs, and then I don't know that those costs are ever,
No,
if we ever recoup
Sad.
it. So, and it's minimal cost. It's more of the hassle. It takes time and staff time to have to rectify the issues, right? So.
yeah.
Second project, and you can see a preliminary schematic there, would be to add a shade structure. We had tried to enter this as like a minor capital outlay item in last year's operating budget. There wasn't capacity for, but so we're kind of lumping it in here. The idea that we have this wide open area up there, we've poured this nice concrete patio. The Lassie League has now taken on operation of the concession stand, so this past year it's actually been open, and they've been selling various items there, and they'll continue to go. I know they've been permitted through the Board of Health. So we anticipate more traffic now in the area, and this would be not only to provide much-needed shade, because it's wide open up there, it would reduce solar glare off that white bright concrete as well, provide a more pleasant space for people that visit, and also protect from errant fly balls, just because that's centrally located within the fields there. And that cost was just south of $22,000
So
to
21 and
install
22.
the posts and the canopy sails and that whole system. And then the third item, the Rec Commission expressed as a priority to bring power over to Field 3 for lighting, for pitching machines and things of that nature. So a smaller scale project, but still a cost of just south of $9,000 by the time you have to run the conduit several hundred feet from the power shack where the panel is on the other side of the park. We have to run it over there. And then provide a NEMA-rated cabinet, which cost a few grand in and of itself, to house the controls. So that between that, the alarm system, and the other two projects,
65.
about $65,000.
And then the last item is the 25 for the cemetery for the two
Yes, which we've been in
more.
past few years. We have had a request for this. We've got 7 total zero turns that our cemetery and grounds division uses to mow the hundreds of acres essentially that the town has between school grounds, parks, playing fields, you name it. Huguenot Fort, all of those sites that they're tasked with mowing, sometimes twice a week, in the heat of the mowing season. So we added one to get to 7 after we kind of inherited all the school grounds. We needed an extra one, so we've added one and
So
we
you took out the
replaced one.
school grounds, so I want to make sure I understand and everybody that's listening understand. You've added some additional responsibility.
Yeah, that was when, going back a few years ago now, when DPW inherited maintenance of school facility, school grounds.
Which is part of our indirect cost to the schools.
That's right.
Which totals about $6.5 million. Go ahead.
So this is a semi-annual, essentially, program to swap those mowers out as the hours creep up. 1,500 to 1,600 hours of use, you really want to start moving on. We've got a couple now that have eclipsed that mark, so we're really in need of replacing those 2, and then I suspect in the next few years we'll have 2 to 3 more maybe that we'll have to
So you're
cycle.
going to try to keep
cycle
ahead
out.
of it, recycle them out.
That's right, yep. And these, again, the salvage value certainly to them, that we would surplus them, go to auction.
Right.
And I'm always surprised, actually, as of late, what commands. We had 2 old push mowers that we surplused as well, and a gentleman from upstate New York bid $80 for it, and he's gonna come down. He came down at 1 o'clock today to pick it up. So these would command a little bit of money, there's some salvage value there. But then we would have, a new equipment that we need to continue to expertly maintain these open spaces in town.
So like I said at the beginning of your presentation, and thank you for it, 17 items, $1,840,000. How we can get maybe creative on some of these grants, whether it's ADA, now that we have a committee, and Green Community Initiative on some of these things, whether it's the windows, town hall, or one of these vehicles. And then some seed money for the $690,000 in fleet replacement. Do some stuff there, even though the interest rates have gone up, it's still more advantageous, because that's a lot of money to incur as far as going out to bond or borrow, if we could do it creatively. Like we've been pretty successful. I had a question on rural field. There was I thought last year, I know we did some money for irrigation.
Yes.
And that was step 1 or part 1. And of course, with the drought we had, I don't know if we were allowed to use it, but where are we at on that project?
Yep, we've got,
I didn't see it mentioned here.
we had commissioned a multi-phase design with some of that, a small portion of that money, to lay out phases of where we wanted to, based on priority of the Rec Commission and DPW's priority, where we wanted to start biting off chunks to irrigate that. We had a phase 1 project we put out to bid earlier this year, and pricing came in way higher than we anticipated. It was later in the season, so we don't know if it was the most competitive time frame. So what we would like to do, and what we plan on doing, is going to bid it out late winter, ahead of next construction season, and see if we get more competitive, advantageous pricing for that phase 1. We've got the plan laid out for subsequent phases. But we've also got to be aware that Aquarion's got a say in the matter here. I have looped them into our plans up there. There's only a 2-inch main that serves that facility up there. We projected for the demand for water to irrigate a majority of that site, we need upwards of a 4-inch line. And Aquarion, from what I'm told, they're going to start tightening up, I think, as a result of what we've seen this year, with drought conditions on irrigation. So there may not be an opportunity to have enough water there to irrigate the whole site. So we'll have to really be targeted as to where we can install the systems, where the greatest need is, and then work going forward to see if there's.
And I know we talked, that we had a study about replacing the football fields with turf and everything, and we're talking about that. I just noted today, I read the article today in the Wall Street, that the NFL's being sued, and they've had some ankle injuries and ACLs
Heard that,
because
yep.
of turf. They want to go back, that artificial turf is not safe for them to play on. So if it isn't safe for professionals to play on, and there's lawsuits now against the NFL and some of these stadium owners, I'm wondering if that's something but there we are, the devil in the details. So now we have grass, but we can't water it. You can't, not safe to play on turf. I don't know where that ends up, but I noted the other thing too, Greenbrier, we made a commitment with the Department of
That was a new
Army.
submission, that's right, yep.
Yeah, but we had money previously, and there was something that happened, right? We
So
didn't have enough.
there was 35,000. When I came on board, I started unpacking, and that was one of the projects obviously I was looking
Yeah.
into and developing, and there was 35,000 that was appropriated a few years back.
Right.
I wasn't sure, when you start costing out the fact you need a septic system there at the very least. We actually have sewer, though, that runs on that side of Main Street. So I started looking at it, thought that's probably the more sustainable route, is to actually tie that in. But when we started evaluating costs for modular buildings, the site work, you got to do an ADA, at least a couple ADA compliant
stalls.
spots and walkways and access. The cost grew, and we found that the 35,000 was not. And I didn't know if there was insurance money that we had received when the building, you can see the old restroom there, had been struck by the tree, but I was told there's no insurance money. So the 35,000 was it, and since that time, we just found that it's not sufficient to get a viable restroom
So you're
facility
looking at
there.
105. Did we have where's the 35?
That includes it. That's after using the
So the
35.
30
We commissioned, again, we did
So it'd be
a.
140, 35 and 105. If you got 35 still somewhere.
We've got, we had the 35. We took about 5 of that to commission a site design and a sewer design.
So now we're like
So we've got
at
we got
135.
exactly. Yep.
To do it. And you're saying there was no insurance money?
Not that
That picture looks very
I
familiar
couldn't-
to me, because that's what 3 years ago, when I got insurance money, that's what happened to my pool house.
Yeah,
And I did get insurance money. So you're saying we didn't, you didn't, I did?
when I investigated, I inquired about it. With the insurance company, with the manager's office, there was no insurance money that I was aware of that we had. So.
Outside structures was covered. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I know in the caveat, obviously with this site, it's Army Corps land, right? We've got essentially a perpetual lease the
Yeah,
town does.
but
and
we
this
made a
is-
commitment to them.
This is one of the requirements of that lease, is to have a facility, a restroom facility.
Right.
So this request is to fund the balance so that we can get this building in.
All right. 20 after we did it. And I apologize for being tardy. Any questions? Karina, you're listening, you're quiet. You have any questions? Karina?
No questions for me. I think this is very thorough. Actually, you know what? I do have one. I'm not sure if there's a way to share the slide deck at all, but that might be useful for me. I think I followed everything using the table, but just, I don't know. That's something we can do.
Share the slides, is that? Yeah, of course.
Sure. We could do
Yeah,
that.
I'll make a note, we'll get that mailed out to you.
Trish has them. I sent her the
Yep.
John,
files.
do you have any questions? Hope you're feeling
all
better.
sounds good.
Mark? Okay, we covered it pretty, well, I spent a lot of prep time on it, and I did go beyond, but I didn't want to, but I think we're looking at, in a lot of areas, older buildings, older vehicles. And it's the same scenario. When do you say enough's enough? Not to sound, we don't want to be frivolous in spending money, but when it's time to replace a building, or it's time to replace a vehicle versus putting good money in after bad. And we're looking at that with the schools right now, 2 of them being over 70 or will be 70. And Garland gave us in 2020 an $8.5 million report. And that didn't include the foundations, which now, I think, Mike, you've said that the 90 that now is at, what, 562 is maybe even worse than 562, and now we still don't know where we are with the siding of the 468 on the siding on Barton and Cherokee.
We're working through design now,
Yeah,
and
we-
that's another
so-
challenge, right, is these design firms and architects are straight out
But when
like
we pull
anyone
that
else.
siding off, are we gonna end up like we did with the library, or is it just gonna be stay siding? But those are two huge items, and we already know that Garland has done a 2020 assessment of 8.5 million, of which we have on our sheets here, when we talk to the school, a small portion of that. Hopefully the state school building authority is gonna give us some money, probably less than $1 million. Not that it's nothing, but it's not, maybe a third of what we're looking for. The other 2/3 are on us. But they're old buildings. When you hold them, when you fold them, I don't know. And it's the same thing with these vehicles. I looked at, like I said, I went through all these vehicles, and I said, well, 2002, 2005, 2006, 2012, the motor blew. Okay, so, well, I think it was a very good presentation. I don't know where we are on all this as far as moving forward. Our average every year is about $3 million, and we're well beyond that as far as capital requests. So we're gonna have to prioritize and look at funding, alternative funding, like we talked about lease purchase on some of these things where we can do, and some grant money. And so we can get we're not gonna get it all done, so everybody that comes here needs to put their hat on and put everything in some kind of priority. And of course, things are gonna, like the senior center, things are gonna come out of that queue and get in front of something that we thought was first. It's not gonna be first, so we never know. We're at the mercy of the unknown.
It's fluid.
Yeah, very fluid. All right. I thank both of you for your time, and again,
you.
I apologize. And that being said, where are we at for next week? What's on the agenda, do you know?
Next week, I believe, is EMS fire.
EMS Fire's next week.
And I guess the bigger question is, where are we with all of you for next Wednesday?
I'm fine.
I think I was okay too.
Okay, and Karina, is this working for you?
Next Wednesday, Karina, is that?
Yeah, I think that would be okay. If I'm able to join by teleconference, that's helpful, just in case my schedule doesn't work out to get me there in person.
Great,
But yeah, I think that should work.
okay, wonderful. So,
Next Wednesday works, even though we're
well, it's not next Wednesday, it's the November 30th.
November 30th.
Yeah, we're not doing the night before Thanksgiving.
That's
so-
what I was gonna say. Yeah, that was my misspeak, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. And then the following meeting, December 7th, is the week after. So we're 2 weeks away and 3 weeks away.
2 weeks away, 3 weeks away, but the next meeting will be the fire chief, fire department, emergency services, and then after that, the 7th, we don't know, was that the schools?
Schools, Trish said she scheduled the schools.
Is there anything from town hall beyond the 7th of December? Anything from the town manager on
Well-
this building or any of the other buildings, or the
I
library, or
would imagine that she has some green communities to discuss, but
what about the library beyond? I see paint on the wall again for 25,000 going out FY '26 or whatever it was.
yeah, I believe that was a facilities request, and I
Yeah,
don't
but
think
that
it's a
goes
new
out
one.
way- That goes, yeah.
So let's see, library.
Library is a building.
Building
It's
envelope.
not FY '24.
Wall repainting, I think that's a resubmission, so that's been
Yeah,
there.
it was a resubmission, because we've been kicking that around.
Yes, yes. Other things have taken priority.
Well, the mold remediation took priority, and then the chiller, in which we just talked about, so that was more important than putting paint on the wall, was trying to
Right.
make sure people were not getting sick going to the library.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, wall painting, FY '25, 25,000, yeah. So, I mean, it's nothing from the library, nothing from the senior center, nothing from the rec center.
Well, those come through the
Town
facilities
manager.
generally, facilities, and,
Well, they're not on here now, so then.
right, so then we're good. This
We're
is what
good.
we have. The town manager may have her own items, but,
And the
we
police
will-
department doesn't want there's no capital request for the police department. They do have in their budget 2 cruisers, I think that's part of their, because of the
that's part of their annual
operating
request,
budget, because
yes.
every year they replace a couple, so that's, all right. I'm just trying to give everybody what's in front of us.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
All right. That being said, is there any conversations, any thoughts, anything that we need to discuss beyond that? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Meeting adjourned.